The organization that I chose for this case study is Eden Prairie Montessori. After I explain each theme, there will be a clip of an interview between me and the director of the school explaining how the organization ties into each theme. The first major theme addressed in all three books for this course is that education systems in America can be improved simply by learning from one another. Berliner and Glass explained that there will never be one answer to the question of how to best educate the citizenry. Our time and energy will be spent more fruitfully not in arguing over which school type is inherently better, but in advocating instead for adequate funding resources and support for the education of all children. This quote is on page 40. Sahlberg then emphasizes that Finland has been able to transform its education system for something elitist, unknown, and inefficient into a paragon of equity and efficiency, which is on page 7. William then says, if we believe that success can be unlimited, that all can be successful, then we need to change some pretty big systems to allow us to build on all of our children's strengths, which is on page 25. Each of these quotes can conclude to the idea that in order for the education system to improve, teachers and schools have to progress as a whole by learning from each other rather than being separated and filtered. How is this organization, would you say, learned from other organizations or like taught somewhere else, or kind of like where's the inspiration from, I guess?
How was the Montessori method developed?
Yeah.
Well, it was developed by Dr. Maria Montessori in Italy. She was, I actually just graduated from the training center. She was walking along the street and saw a child just completely absorbed by this red balloon, and she was just so fascinated by his fascination with just this simple balloon. And she was a very, very intelligent woman, had her medical degree, and was just thought that, if a child can just be absorbed by this simple red balloon, imagine what they could do if they actually had, like didactic materials to help them learn. Mm-hmm. So, from there she kind of started working with children and kind of developing materials. And like I said, the Montessori method, how she developed it was all based on observation. So everything that I have learned, even in my education, was through observation. Mm-hmm. So she put in countless hours of observation, and so have I, because we noticed that the same pattern really continues. The same pattern is within all children in terms of how they are developmentally. Yeah. So that's how it was developed.
Okay. The second major theme addressed in these books is that success is not measurable. The first example is given by Sahlberg, as she states the many reasons students want to become teachers in Finland. It becomes apparent that teachers in certain countries are much unlike teachers in other countries. Teacher education is an important and recognized part of higher education in Finland. In many other nations, the situation is different. Teacher preparation is frequently viewed as semi-professional training arranged outside of an academic university, which is found on page 78. Being a teacher does not equal to one level of success, as it is perceived as more or less honorable in different nations. The next example is by Berliner and Glass, and as they explain how test scores are a poor judgment of how successful an education program is. This is because there are many factors that play into the teacher's way of teaching. For example, if the job of a first-year teacher is so difficult and stressful for virtually all teachers regardless of where they were trained, then student test scores from first and even second-year teachers are not likely to be indicative of how those teachers ultimately will perform. This is found on page 85. Lastly, this theme comes up when William states that we have not agreed upon a set of standards of learning to which we hold all schools and all teachers accountable. That's what makes it nearly impossible to measure success in schools. We don't know what success is. This quote is found on page 87. Basically, success of teachers and students are very hard to measure due to the many factors that play into education. Cool. What are your thoughts on success being immeasurable and like the competitiveness between children? Do you support that or do you not?
Absolutely not. No, with Montessori, like I said, we don't really support, being competitive. One is better than the other because, like humans, like you and I, we are completely different. We can't. Mm-hmm. I can't compare you to me. So how can we do that? How can we expect that of children?
Right. Is there any way of measuring that you guys do here, or like gold stars, or is there any type of prizes or anything?
No, we don't believe in incentives here because,
mm-hmm.
remarkable about children is that they're naturally pleasing at this age. They just naturally want to please, and they get excited about the smallest things. I mean, the other day I was working with my children, and my one of my girls had brought me her math book and said, I just really want to do addition. And so we worked together, and I mean, we went up to the table of 21, and she was so excited. And so, that's my job as their teacher, is to inspire that level of learning, to get excited with them. So because of my excitement, they don't need that incentive to do well.
Right.
So it's really great, because we don't necessarily believe in that, and so we have faith and trust in the children that they will make the right choices with our guidance. So we give that children that freedom to make the choices and trust them to do so. And giving them that is quite remarkable, because they do it. So
yeah, I'm sure. All right. So how do you think the effectiveness of a teacher's teaching should be measured? Like, kind of flipping it from the child.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how sometimes there's, like, people who come and review the teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you think that's measurable, or do you think it's kind of just, there's, like, no way to really measure the effectiveness?
Not necessarily. I don't think there really is a way to measure a teacher's effectiveness. Like I said, every child is completely different, and it all depends, too, on the guidance that children are getting at home as well.
Mm-hmm.
The teacher is with the child, for 8 hours a day, but, we ask parents to also help work on specific skills at home as well. Mm-hmm. So if, it takes a partnership between both teacher and parent to measure that success, because as educators, we can only do so much. So that's where it comes, that partnership between the parent and the teacher.
Mm-hmm. The third common theme between these three books is that education has come a long way and must continue to develop and expand. The first example is by Salberg. She explains how a typical feature of education in Finland is the encouragement of teachers and students to try new ideas and methods, to learn from innovations, and to cultivate creativity in schools. This quote is found on page 127. Next, Berliner and Glass explain how far we have come by stating, many of these students would not have had access or been admitted to college in the past due to their parents' lack of education, attendance at poor and under-resourced schools, and even racist and all-exclusive admission policies. This is found on page 153. Also, Williams emphasizes the importance of education systems continuing to develop and expand, as she states, I have always known that schools are the wombs for society we wish to create or to replicate. So if we want a future without racism, then we need to grow that future in our schools. And this quote is found on page 92. How do you think the education systems can really develop and expand in order to basically benefit the child in the real world, and how this organization demonstrates that? I think that you kind of touched on how Montessori-based learning is kind of centered around like a real-world situation with the unity aspect. Mm-hmm. But can you go a little further with that?
Like in terms of real life, how does that prepare them for reality?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, definitely. So there's an area in our classroom called the exercises of practical life. And so practical life is very, very interesting, because it helps a child adapt to like his natural environment. So what you'll see in practical life is everything that helps them foster independence. For example, simple things like buttoning, like how to button, how to sew, how to sweep, how to use a dustpan, how to wash laundry. So all these things that we have, the child sees every day in their natural environment. So, we also do different types of cooking exercises as well too. So the children have the opportunity to cut their own apples and to serve it to others in the classroom. They have the opportunity to bake if they want to, and we trust them with that. So everything, it starts with practical life, and it all begins with that independence. Mm-hmm. And so because of that foundation really builds their future self and that independence. So all of these exercises that we do have, really do prepare them for real life.
That concludes my case study. A few things implied or things from the interview that would have been too long to include are that Montessori styles of teaching include all children working together of all ages, races, and genders. This specific style of teaching supports the three themes in general because of its emphasis on unity, the individualistic approach, and the incompetitiveness. Thanks for watching.